Poverty. Maybe you picture hungry people, homelessness, empty pockets, dirtiness, lice, hunger. Maybe there's a face that comes to mind. Male, female, old, young. It's impossible to choose just one face from the nearly 50 million Americans living in poverty. You're probably thinking that's a ridiculous number. Almost 7% of the entire US population living in poverty? That's insane. But you'd have to know what constitutes poverty. We believe poverty is not just an economic issue. It also has social aspects that should be measured for each household, considering income and savings, including near cash and in-kind benefit, non-discretionary expenses, household composition, geographic location, physical and mental health, changing standard of living, changing cost of living, age, and depth of poverty. There are two main approaches to defining poverty. There's policy and descriptive. The descriptive method is all about acknowledging deprivation. Step 1, determine the means that people do and do not have. Step 2, if we had all the resources we needed, what would we do to help these people? Step 3, determine the actual policy choices that are in line with the means we have. A policy approach is based on identifying the focus of public action. The steps are reversed in this case. First making the policy and then defining poverty as to how the policy will be able to help them. Poverty should be defined by what people do not have, not by what's easiest to measure or what the government can afford to do to help. Social poverty, on the other hand, focuses a little less on money and a little more on a thing called social inclusion, or being able to actively participate in society. Adam Smith, a big-time philosopher and economist of the Enlightenment era, held that being poor meant not having what was needed to be a credible member of society. When Smith wrote this, a man would need a proper linen shirt to appear in public without any shame. Anyone dressed improperly would be impoverished. Let me tell you about Martha Nussbaum's approach on this whole poverty deal. She's a real fan of capabilities. If you were to ask her what are capabilities, she would respond by saying, they are sets of possible functioning. A functioning is what a person can actively do. Let's talk to the hand. Nussbaum believes that humanity should share a goal for everyone to obtain at least a threshold level of the combined capabilities of life, bodily health, bodily integrity, senses, imagination and thought, emotions, practical reason, affiliation, interactions with other species, play and leisure, and control over one's political and material environment. Allowing a human a certain level of each one of these is how Nussbaum defines treating people with equal respect. Limits on any of these capabilities greatly limits people's functionings. She believes that a nation cannot satisfy the need for one capability by giving people a large amount of another, or even by giving them money. All are distinctive and need to be secured and protected. But that's Nussbaum's list. You may agree on what she defines as central capabilities, or you may not. That doesn't change the fact that capabilities are all about choices. They represent what each person could possibly choose to do. So you're in poverty if you do not have the choice to do certain basic things, rather than defining poverty by what people buy, which could get tricky, since some people might choose to or not to spend their money on certain things. But we should never incorrectly classify poverty, just because we're scared of harder work. Now get ready, because I'm going to start throwing some letters at you. First, the O, P, M. The official poverty measure. Once upon a time, Molly Orshansky of the Social Security Administration, the S, A, saw that the modest families spent about 1/3 of their income on food. Orshansky took the USDA's, United States Department of Agriculture, Economy Food Plan, or Lowest Food Cost Plan, and multiplied it by 3 to set the United States' official poverty threshold, or the FPT. USDA's model, called the Economy Food Plan, or Lowest Cost Plan, or the FPT, which we do not abbreviate to the EFP, but we could if we wanted to. Each year since its 1969 debut, the OPM adjusted for the cost of living thanks to the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, and threshold is adjusted for family size, composition, and the age of the householder. However, the OPM is still sorely out of date. Now food is cheap, so now only about 1/6 or 1/10 of a family's expenses is on food. The OPM is also still stuck in its 1960s mind frame when it defines family. It does so in the old-fashioned sense, with just blood relative and legal marriage. Geographical differences in pricing, non-discretionary expenses, medical costs, and the changing standard of living are not accounted for in the OPM. But as economist John Iceland has pointed out, thanks to the OPM being an absolute measure, it has achieved a level of consensus that no other measure in the United States can claim. And here's another system with a few more letters. The S, T, M, or the standard poverty measure is conducted by the National Research Council of the National Academy of Science, or the NAS. The NAS partly came up with the SPM to see if the government programs were working. The SPM does account for a lot of what the OPM missed, but unlike the OPM, the SPM does not adjust its poverty threshold for the age of the householder. We think that poverty should be measured by capabilities, which are the sets of possible functionings. They are the things that a person has the opportunity to do. All central capabilities, from nourishment to education to control over one's environment, can be bought with money. The OPM and the SPM measure that. We don't just want to consider the money aspect. We want to look at health, geographic location, proximity to community programs, age, gender. Educational, these are aspects of a household that determines what it can spend its money on. Gathering all of this information would be difficult. And yes, counting all of these factors while measuring poverty might very well lead to an increase in statistics, might lead to statistics with higher percentages. But please understand that there's no automatic jump from our measuring of poverty to the government. And ways to address poverty? Well, that would take an entirely different video. Right now, we're just looking at measurement, and we believe that people's choices, or lack of them, matter. Because to us, leading a dignified life is not the same thing as solely existing.